damage from the winds. So lately, almost every day, we have high winds. And it's been raining a lot this winter. Sometimes a couple weeks of rain with little respites or respites, however you like to say it, from the rain. Um, it's beautiful, 12 degrees, warm sunlight, and according to the weather report on my phone app, weather app, it's going to start raining in an hour or so again. I think around, well, maybe a few hours. So I have a chance to go take a bit of a walk. You can see down here plenty of water. So there's this interesting Hemingway quote. Somebody says, "How do you go bankrupt?" And Hemingway says, "Slowly, then all at once." So I was listening to the Breaking Down Collapse podcast, the young guys. You know, these are young people in their 30s talking about collapse. It's kind of heart-wrenching. But anyway, that kind of came to my mind when I was listening to it, because you know, it's hard to notice something that's happening slowly, so catabolic, right? And suddenly you're in a world like, let's say, 10 years from now, where it just doesn't resemble the world we lived in 10 years ago. And I'm not talking about Techno Optimism. So the idea that, you know, we're going to have all these robots and new kinds of batteries for cars and all this kind of stuff, because that leads into the subject of overshoot and finite resources on a, you know, we just don't have all the resources, and we probably don't have the time to achieve the technological innovations that we need to achieve, even with AI, fast enough to stave off various aspects of collapse, whether we're talking economic, ecological, sociological, political, climate problems, and so on. So, a good chance to think about these things in the sunshine. It's a beautiful day. At some point, there's going to be a very cool bonfire here. This is the bonfire place, man. We burn. Party over fire. Yeah, so here in my secret garden, um, yeah, for me it's very interesting to consider techno-optimism and concepts like Buckminster Fuller's ephemeralization and so on when I'm thinking about collapse. I don't want collapse, but it's just the way we live, it's inevitable. So why not think about it? Um, I'm not really a techno optimist, even though I love technology a lot and I use it a lot, because I think that it's even though it provides us with a lot of very useful tools, it also subtracts things from our humanity and our experience of life. And also, for all the technical fixes that we come up with, there are externalities or negative impacts, second, third order effects that we can't predict or understand or control. And so we're always playing catch up. So every time we invent something, maybe a problem is connected to it, and then we have to invent another solution to a new problem, which means we need more resources, more energy to accomplish it. Now, one of the things I find extremely fascinating and I love very, very much is robotics. So every time I see one of these robotics companies like General Dynamics or other ones making robots that can practically break dance, do front flips and stuff, and run and stop on a dime and all that kind of thing. It blows my mind and I love it. And I've always said for a long time, decades, that if all the robots did the work and all we had to do was like write songs and do plays and and stuff like that, it'd be great. Of course, we couldn't sustain that with 10 billion people on the planet because we still have to grow food. So we still need Haber-Bosch, we still need to fix nitrogen, we still need oil and gas and so on. And we need healthy soil. You understand. Everything's interconnected. So in my story, Black and White, one of the characters is Francis' young husband. He was one of the big players in the Great Game, the competition between the British Empire and the Russian Empire back at the turn of the 19th, 20th centuries. He attacked Tibet, massacred a lot of monks there. He was a fascinating character who founded an interfaith movement. He was a mystic. He was described as childlike. Just a fascinating character, one of my favorite characters in history. And I'm not going to give away the story, but he's one of these characters. And that's why I keep calling everything the Great Game, because you have these social constructs, these polities, empires, and so on, doing their mischief around the world for whatever reason. We can always rationalize good reasons for doing something. And running around, both discovering amazing things, both being incredibly human and spiritual, and at the same time brutal and technical in their implementation of their imperial conquests, desires, ambitions, whatever it is. And we're in the same boat today, only I think that the quality of leadership and the kinds of people that are in charge are more diluted, more fantastical, more ignorant in many, many ways. But since they have lots and lots of money, and you have to understand how money is created, but that's another story. Lots of good videos on that one, including Peak Prosperity's series about that came out in 2014, I think. Anyway, whatever you think about that, modern monetary theory or whatever. Anyway, these guys have lots of money, partially because they got lucky, partially because they positioned themselves in a situation where they could get lucky, and so on, and from initiative and work and whatever. But they're not smarter than you or better than you as people, right? They're just people, but they're really rich, and they tend to drink their own Kool-Aid and then think that they can solve problems and that it's all about them, and they have to do the work because nobody else can do the work as well as they can, and so on. And so they become incredibly hubristic and deluded and crazy and pathological or sociological. Some of them are psychopaths, I think. But they won't slow down and take their time and think things through, and they certainly don't care about the masses, whatever you think that is, the people, le peuple, the public, plebs and proles, workers, you know, your common person. Uh, you know, they're all about their grand ideas and ambitions, and they're going to push things through no matter what. So we have this great technology, robotics, artificial intelligence, with lots of fantastic tools, good for communications, for filmmaking, for producing music and content, the fire hose of never-ending content that I'm participating in right now, ironically, or maybe not ironically, addictively. But anyway, uh, so you have these wonderful tools and stuff, and with great promise, you know, and, but we still have uh, to have the time to implement them in such a way that it's democratically good for people. Of course, some people don't care about that because they think there's too many plebs and proles on the planet. I'm not at all talking about or advocating this idea of, you know, the Davos crowd or whatever trying to depop the world. I don't think you need conspiracies for this. I think they take care of themselves. That's what collapse is about. And we can see many historical examples of this, so it's nothing new. And many fine intellects have written about it over hundreds of years. And so we should be able to get our heads around it, even though it's, for some people, dire or depressing subject. But I think at some point the plug's going to be pulled on all this miraculous technology, and we're going to be in a situation where we're rapidly simplifying or going back to a former way of life that looks more like the 19th century or maybe medieval times. I hope that's not true. One always hopes that there'll be islands of, you know, city-states that can survive the climate disaster that's upon us right now. There's just no way around living in a world that's 2 or 3 or 4 degrees above the industrial baseline. It's not going to work for us unless, you know, there's all these ideas of, you know, farming in shipping containers and aquaculture and all kinds of things. You know, there's going to be new ways to create fertilizer or topsoil, or we're going to have different kinds of batteries or whatever. You know, we're just going to innovate our way out of the problem. But there's too many things lined up to wreck all of that. And it would take time. And we're just, you know, with the profit motive, with markets, the market economy that we have around the world, there's no incentive to slow down. It's not about doing things right. It's about making money hand over fist as fast as you can. And then consuming with that money, right? If you're a billionaire, you're buying buildings, and like Bill Gates, you're buying land or whatever. And if you're poor, you're buying a motorcycle or a bicycle to get to work, or trying to buy a house or something like that, or more fun stuff. If you're relatively wealthy and traveling around the world and, you know, posting to Instagram and all that fun stuff. But this could diminish very quickly, and I don't think people are psychologically prepared for it. So I think it's a good exercise to indulge in, even just for fun. Like, I don't believe any of this. It's all bullshit. You know, it's ridiculous. Doomists, gloomers, boomers, idiots, whatever. Pessimists, you know, they just don't know what they're talking about. You know, these tech gurus and bros are geniuses, and it's an engineering problem. It'll all be fixed, you know, it's not. But you look at, in detail at things, at the numbers and the physical reality and physics and so on, and you can't come to that conclusion at all. But anyway, even if you're totally skeptical of any kind of scenarios where we don't just have infinite growth on a finite planet and solve all our problems, no problem, even though we're talking about going to war with China and all this madness. I mean, I would think that if we collaborated across nation states and cultures to solve problems and create a better world, we'd do a great job over time, but we'd have to slow down and stop this pernicious, destructive competition that we have. So people who are more techno-friendly and optimistic, like Peter Josephs, have ideas about how to go about that. There's lots of other people that have ideas. Other people are talking about simplifying life, consuming less, um, being more frugal, growing your own food. I think those kinds of scenarios are going to happen regardless of what you think, but it would be fun to do the other stuff like Peter Josephs and other people, not the Venus Project per se. I think that's a little out there. Overly optimistic sci-fi stuff like I would write is just a story for fun and entertainment. But if you could convince people to focus on other things besides market competition and war and all that kind of stuff, we could probably come up with a pretty good opportunity to mitigate the worst consequences, at least for the next 100 years, of climate change, because a lot of that's locked in the system already and can't be sorted out even if we had carbon capture and other technologies like that. So, but we can make things nice for another 100 years, a few generations maybe. And in that time, if we collaborated and worked together, we might be able to come up with technological and engineering solutions to our problems. I think geoengineering is way far off, and multi-planetary, populations way far off. You can't say that anything's impossible, so you do your Pascal's wager on it and say, well, anything's possible, so I might as well think about it, and then do your Bayesian reasoning on it and say, but what are the probabilities of that happening within these parameters, within this timeline or whatever it is? And you'll come up with different answers to those questions when you do that. So, yeah, it's good to be skeptical, but it's also good to entertain these things, especially when there's so much evidence for it across so many domains of really disciplined, focused, and not corrupt science. We're talking about science you can trust. So that's what I'm thinking. And this is like an extra little bit on the video that I posted yesterday just for fun. So I don't think it's something we should shy away from, thinking about these things. I'd like to have a group here where we talked about stuff like this as a community building project, not as I want to convince you we're doomed thing or anything like that, or I want to make money off of this network. No, just get together, get to know people, go bowling, play darts, have a drink, do whatever, and talk about these kinds of things, And that could stem from that question, how do you want to be remembered by your grandchildren and so on? If they're going to talk about their legacy, what did my grandpa do? What did my grandma do? And what would you like them to talk about? Made money, starved to death, went to war, which one do you think would be the best? And on that framework, we could start to talk about things, not pure philosophical idealism or pure philosophical skepticism, but just thinking of what if we all did it this way, and what if we did it that way, and what might the outcomes be in those cases? Kind of like thought experiments, and just have fun, lively conversation without arguing, without letting ideology or politics or religion or other difficult to navigate and stubborn issues or ways of thinking getting in the way of a nice, lively, happy, interesting conversation. And I think, whenever I talk to my friends like this, we laugh a lot. There's a lot of humor in it, a lot of imagination, and it's fun to exercise our intellect and storytelling capability and smile at each other and enjoy the community. So offline, away from the tubes and the email and the games and all that stuff, the great TV shows and whatnot, we could get together and we could just tell stories like this using our imagination. What if? Imagine that. All right. Take good care. Have a nice Sunday. Bully MT out.